Okay, I'm going to start off with roll call. We have a few people missing this evening. Looks like Gregory was not able to attend and Matthew was not able to attend. We have here Michael, Ray, David, and Kenneth. We'll start with public comment from the public, and I don't see any public here yet. So I'll open it up for any public comment from the board.
Nope.
Okay, great. We'll move right on to the appointments. We have a 400 Electric Avenue de minimis change. That's from Dan and Jean Proctor.
Correct. They will not be in attendance tonight. So this is in response to the relocation of the sign for the Whalum Wash. If you recall, when they were in front of the board, where they wanted to put the sign was within the required setback. They showed it placed next to the building. They went and sought the special permit from the zoning board, which was granted. They would like to, or they have installed the sign at the location approved by the special permit, and they neglected to come back to you beforehand out of error, and once I raised it to them, they immediately filed as requested.
All right. I looked at where they put the sign. I think is a perfectly acceptable location. I did read the ZBA finding as well. Did you guys have any comments about the?
No, I read everything at all. I've seen the sign in its current location. It looks great.
No comments.
No comment? So what's what we just have
You
to
would just vote, yeah, just vote to accept the de minimis change.
I accept a motion to accept the de minimis change.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next order of business is 40 Summer Street, pre-submittal meeting for sale of motor vehicles.
Correct.
This one, to raise the issue that I started talking about, I felt that the decision from the ZBA was inconclusive, or I shouldn't say it was inconclusive. My conclusion from it is that the ZBA approved this for 20 cars, because that's what their motion indicated, was it was for the storage and display of 20 motor vehicles. Then later it talked about a limit of 20 cars, but there's a potential Scribner's note where they wrote 50 in parentheses. And then the request was to abide by the latest special permit that was approved for this location, which I believe was upgraded from 20 to 50 as the last special permit. So do we have Carlos Bismarck Terrero here to this evening? Okay, so the question is, are you looking for approval of 20 cars, which is what we received from the ZBA? Or
Well, come up to the microphone, please.
can you come up to the microphone, please? I'm sorry. Just for the record, you can state your name.
Sure. Aaron Cosgrove.
Okay.
Carlos Torretto.
Okay, so are you requesting for approval for 50 cars or 20 cars?
50.
50. Okay, so what do we do? Because the ZBA permit was granted for 20.
So this is a pre-submittal meeting under the planning board's rules and regs.
Okay,
So
great.
in,
There's an opportunity here, we can
correct,
straighten this all out.
in gaining the special permit from the zoning board, Mr. Cosgrove came to speak to me and said, well, what we want to do is we want to use this plan that we have. And I said, well, you can certainly try that, but we have this pre-submittal meeting. It'd probably be worth to come in and talk to the board and see what their expectations were as far as the design of the lot. And you can see that the plan attached certainly has a lot of blocking in it. If you're familiar with the site, it's partially improved and partially kind of dirt and scraggly rock and
Right.
whatnot. So, there's certainly some variance in what you would normally approve for a parking area for sale cars. there had been a dealership there previously, probably dating back to 1996 or so. So I don't know, again, what the board's expectation as far as upgrades would be, and so I suggested that this was probably the best path for him to.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking about the 20 versus 50, because I think that this site is kind of small for 50 vehicles, based upon how we would be organizing the parking for the vehicles on the site. But let's say that they are requesting 50. Is there guidance on the parking plan with regards to used car dealerships? Because I know the other used car dealership, we did have directives around the parking.
Which used car
The one that
dealer?
was on Mass Ave. It was
We
for a short period of
did. It was a
time.
much smaller
Right.
lot. I think his license was for 9 cars.
Right. But we
and-
did disallow the double parking.
Correct. You did disallow the blocking, and I think some of that was in response to the proximity to the street and the uncontrolled entrance at
Okay.
Mass Ave, as I recall. Now, that doesn't mean that you should allow blocking. I think that, in my experience, and unfortunately I have more car lot experience than I like, but what you find is there's often display and there's storage. And generally the storage is towards the rear of the lot. This is, again, as you mentioned, a smaller lot. Oftentimes, large lots have, the display where you go and walk around, and then they have the other 6 colors and 3 trim levels, and they keep them, locked away in a fence somewhere that's out of sight.
Right, but that's not the case.
Correct, that's not this case. So there isn't guidance in our bylaw. And because the zoning board has special permit granting authority over the use, they looked at that and they felt that that was adequate for their purposes, and now we get into the site plan and the objectives within the site plan and what the design criteria and requirements are, and you would have to find that what they're proposing in there meets those same requirements.
Right, but we don't actually have a site plan, we just have this one sheet.
Correct, and that's why I suggested this meeting. The applicant wanted to bring this forward as their submittal for site plan, and I said, I don't think that meets what the board has previously expected, to which he countered, this is what was used for the previous license, this is what has been used in the past, and I said, well then, why don't you do the pre-submittal, come and see how the board feels about what's there, and they can give you guidance on what they think would be a reasonable standard to approve something on that lot moving forward.
Okay. Did you folks have anything to add? You want to add anything to,
We would just like to address any concerns you might have.
okay.
So I'm still confused. Are we looking at 20 or 50?
They're going to be requesting 50, I think.
But they've been approved for 20.
Well,
But
they're likely going to
28,
have to go
but-
back to talk to the
I
zoning
think there's a
board.
clarification that needs to be had from the zoning board
Yeah.
on what that was.
Yeah, on what
Number
that
2
was.
says a limit of 50 cars may be displayed for storage, sales, and employee parking. So I think that what they're looking for is to max that out. And based on how many, the plan is that they submitted, are you guys looking for, how many cars are you planning on having on this lot?
50 total maxed.
50 total max, all right.
That isn't to say that day one, there would be 50 cars.
Of course
on the lot.
not.
Yeah.
But at peak operation or most of your operating
Correct.
time, you're going to be close to 50.
Are you speaking number 2 under the conditions?
Yes.
That
That's the
says
one that
both
says
20 and 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, number 1 says,
If you
number
look at-
2, right?
It says 20 and 50.
50.
Yeah. A limit of 20,
That's
in
the
parentheses,
issue.
50 cars.
That's the issue with the actual special permit.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we need to find out what that's gonna, because it's really moot if they say, no, we meant 20. So,
Yeah, on a keypad, 2 and 5 are right near each other.
Correct.
So it could be a,
That's why I say I think it's
Right,
probably
but
a
the-
Scrivener's error.
but
They
the-
typed 20 twice.
yeah, up in the discussion, it was
20.
20. So,
20,
yeah.
20. So, I have a couple questions. If you were limited to 20 cars, would that change your plans?
It would have an effect, yes. Because some of the cars, like, if you can see how deep the rows go, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows.
Yeah.
Well, some of those rows, especially in the rears, could be for wholesale vehicles.
Yeah.
In other words, another dealer says, hey, you're a buyer, I need this, that, and the other thing, can you pick it up for me?
Okay.
That type of thing. That will be trimmed back.
Yeah,
On the retail side, 20 vehicles works.
yeah,
Some of the other stuff, the wholesale side, that will probably have to be
okay.
phased out. And the whole idea behind the 50 is as market conditions change. Retail's high sometimes, commercial's high another. I think when in Woodburg, where we have Ralph doing commercial vehicles, that's pretty much it. So there's a definite market there, but you have to have the room for it, especially if you get into the vans.
Yeah,
So the 50 gives you the room to accommodate that, depending on the fluctuation, like I say, with retail versus wholesale and so on. If it's scaled back, it's not going to affect the retail side, but it'll have a bearing on some of the other things. So that's why we requested the 50. The 50 gives us maximum flexibility.
okay.
Okay, I have a couple questions for the board. This is a new one, relatively new one, you know what I mean? That's doing a pre-submittal. So my question is, no one's been noticed, right? on this?
Correct.
Do we know whether there are neighbors residential on either side?
There
Do
is
we know?
not.
There's not. It's commercial on both
If
sides.
looking at it, as you're looking at it, the property to your right is essentially vacant, and I believe that's part of the MBTA lot, if
Okay.
I'm recalling correctly. And to the left
Is the other-
is the two-bay garage
Yeah.
owned by Peter Kelly.
Who's
This-
moving up top?
Correct.
Yeah.
Who had the approval for that. He's chosen not to exercise that. His brother and he own this lot together.
Oh, they do?
Correct.
Okay, and they're the ones that are either leasing or selling?
These gentlemen are looking to lease from that,
From them?
from those
okay.
gentlemen.
Okay, so there won't be any issue there? I mean, we
No,
can
this is
assume there-
down on the more commercial part of Summer Street.
Okay.
Looking in the discussion, the first blurb, and I think that we do need to ask the zoning board for clarification, because even looking in the blurb, it says, the last sentence of the discussion, in 2012, a special permit was issued for 50 cars for display and sale. So I think that we have a question, I have a question, over what exactly was approved.
Right.
Was it 50 or was it 20?
Exactly.
I think that
understood.
I think one way to read this is that, you have permission for 20 up to a maximum of 50. And another way to read it is that you have requested 50 and they said you have 20. So I think we just have to ask them for clarification on that. And that's the zoning board of appeals. So that's one.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
Looking at your plan, I think that, here are my initial thoughts on it, are looking at your 8 cars in each column, I guess 8 columns and 4 rows, is that, of course, with you mentioning commercial vehicles, that there's going to be some variance to that. Also, with how tight you've kind of put these together, and most cars need, 2 to 3 feet around them.
You lose spots.
Yeah,
So in this configuration that's shown here, that's maximum.
that's
But if you have a
maximum for like
15
small sedans or something?
Correct. If you have a 15 passenger van that you're going to try to sell to the local church, well, you're going to lose a couple of these spots.
Yeah,
So one may count as 2. You get a larger vehicle, maybe it counts as 3. But the allotted area doesn't change. If you can only fit 20 in what you thought were going to accommodate 50, well, that's the way it is.
How many employees do you plan on having on the lot? 2?
Yeah.
And where's the employee parking?
If you look at the back here, the far back, you see those 4 cars?
Yes.
And also, if you're fortunate enough to have a peak performance, and you do have 50 cars, my feeling is you want to drive them, so you'd have 4 dealer plates also. So you want to maybe spend 2 days in a car, move on to the next car. In other words, if I hear something, smell something, I don't want the customer to feel that, I want to feel it.
Yep.
So that gives you the opportunity to go through each of the cars. So it goes to service, goes to, Dr. Otto Don up there. And he does his thing, and he's a good mechanic and all, but when you drive it, sometimes other things surface. So that gives you an opportunity to go through the inventory. So typically, you'd be on a dealer plate, and your objective is to go through one at a time.
Yeah.
Comes back from service, drive it. So eventually, when it gets to the retail customer, you got a lot of happy people.
So your plan is that your employee parking would be consumed by vehicles that you're selling?
Could be. No matter how you configure it, the maximum is 50 units, period, employee or otherwise.
So the answer, I guess, to the question is that these last is twofold. Number one is that you're going to operate kind of like most dealerships. So once you go through your inventory, you're driving the vehicles that are on your lot. I get that. And that if you have additional vehicles or whatever else is going on, you have to take your wife's car to the shop or something, that you'll park in one of these rear floor
Correct.
spaces.
Under no circumstance can it exceed the 50.
When you have more than 4 customers looking at cars at a time, where's your overflow going to be? Because you have 4 allotted spaces, but if that were to occur, where's the additional parking going to take place?
You have the 4 up there. If we had to use the 4 in the back, if we see the trends, if things are moving that way, you see 2, 4, 6 cars on the side
I
there.
do.
That would be ideal. That will keep us out of the way of the customer.
Okay. And the limitations that the zoning board put on as far as their conditions, where they're saying can't have any garbage out, things of that nature, do you have any problems with the limitations that they've given?
0. A good neighbor policy should encompass all that anyways.
Yep.
Really, if you have to explain that to somebody, you get the wrong person in front of you.
What kind of night lighting are you, we typically want dark sky compliant, but this is a lot with presumably a lot of money for inventory, so what kind of lighting do you plan on having at night?
It would be, once we get to that stage,
Yep.
having the LED lights would be really nice.
Are you actually planning on doing any improvements to this, or are you just leasing it as is?
We're leasing it as is.
And is it-
Other things would come down the road.
Crushed gravel, or is it partially?
Partially paved now.
Partially paved.
Is it paved where the cars are going to be parked?
Yes.
Is it paved where the parking is for customers?
On that top right-hand side, on those 4 corners, no.
So customer parking is in gravel, but the
Correct.
used car parking is on pavement?
Correct.
There's one.
So we can't even paint lines.
If I'm right, there's no curb, right? It's all open?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's part of, the ZBA asked for that 20-foot setback, and you said you're going to put
Yes.
posts with
Yes.
one of those yellow plastic chain things.
right.
in it. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the setback.
Also, I would note that it's open now. This coming spring, they should be starting construction on Summer Street.
Yeah.
And it's a tip project.
Yeah,
When they do those projects, they formalize all the driveways.
yeah.
And they probably already have the design done, and they may be willing to shift it slightly, but there will be a designated entrance. that
Are
will
you
be
aware of
curved.
that's part of the TIP program and it's going to be redone?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, they won't have a wide open.
No, it won't be an
With all the single
uncontrolled
curb.
access.
Yeah.
It'll be a 24 or 36 foot wide.
So the chains will be up after hours
Oh, yes.
to close off the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll show you the map. So you're going to make this use a much bigger space than what's currently used.
Yes.
Yeah, and then in the area that is, 'cause I'm looking at it right now, that looks like grass, what are you doing there?
We're gonna widen that.
Well, eventually, to your point about the 50 units,
Yep.
if you had 50 units, at that point, now, you're going to have to do other things.
Yep.
So with the way the paving is right now, that would accommodate getting started.
Yep.
Getting things rolling. And then towards perhaps next fall, everything's rolling nicely. Now we can talk about doing full paving across the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So one step at a time.
Yeah, you got to start the business, get it to grow,
Exactly.
make your money, and then
Sure.
you would expand. What I guess I have a question on is, if we say that this plan, and this question I guess is for you, Adam, if we say that this plan is something that we support after our clarifications, what is the trigger that would then require them to come back to get,
Well, that's,
to ensure that
Actual
this,
approval?
yeah, to ensure that this actually gets paved and that we're not parking cars on?
well, that's a
grass?
good question, because there's a couple of different ways that you could look at it. You could require that they put together an actual plan now
Yeah.
for what it would look like and approve it in phases of some manner, and
Yeah.
say you could start with 15 cars that you can park on the paved area, and at such time as you need to pave, then you need to comply with the engineered plan that you've put together. I think, to your point, getting the business started, that's certainly a financial burden at this point. Under site plan approval, the construction rehabilitation of a building, the construction reconfiguration or renovation of parking facilities with the exception of normal maintenance would automatically trigger site plan approval. So where they have a parking area that's unconstructed now, expanding that to a constructed area would require a site plan approval.
Right, but just using it as it is would not, correct?
Correct.
So I think what we may be looking at here is, again, depending upon what the configuration actually turns out to be, we would probably only approve it for its current state, which is gravel. And then if you did want to expand, as you were talking about, like this fall,
They would have to come
likely
back.
trigger a site plan approval. And then we would go through and get a little bit more details on it. So I guess the question that we would have is, do we do a mini site plan approval on the intended use, and can they use something like the previous submitted one as a starting point?
Yeah, I mean, you have
'Cause we
that
don't want to
right.
make them do an engineered plan or anything.
Correct. You can waive any and all portions.
Yeah.
And you've done that on other facilities that are pre-existing lots where someone is continuing the use
Yep.
in, some significantly similar way. I would argue that this is exactly similar to what was there before. They would be in front of you because they had to gain a special permit, as the it requires a special permit in that district. So you could give them a waiver of site plan approval for what was there previously. You even have the ability to condition that. You could also include notes that, you mentioned these things are something that you might be doing in the future. This is what the trigger for site plan approval would
Right.
be. Should you do that without site plan approval, there could be penalties, pains and penalties, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, that's the way that I think would be a good way to structure it. What do you guys think?
So, let's get it straight here. So you do
We could waive, we could essentially waive site plan approval because it's a continued use
Yep.
that's exactly aligned with the last site plan approval.
okay,
So because they're not altering the site,
They're not
they're
gonna
just
do anything.
reusing it in the same manner.
and wait for the trigger.
Correct.
Trigger would be when they go to do their improvements, they're gonna put new lights in, they're gonna put as a matter of fact, the sign you're not even changing, you're just changing the name on the existing
Right,
sign,
sorry.
correct?
Okay.
So any of these changes to improve the site, that would trigger a site plan approval.
Yeah.
Then we would go over how they're structuring the driveway. And if you're thinking by next fall, that's probably gonna line up well with when Summer Street's going in there.
Sure,
and
yep.
Starting to tell you where your curb cut's gonna be and things that maybe.
Good
when
time
you
to put in
wanna
signage
come
or-
in and
yeah.
Change
Okay,
things
that
up.
timing works well.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that. That sounds like a
No, I'm
good
not either.
plan.
I wonder, though, in their best interest, if it may be better for them to come before us once and then just have us approve this in phases.
Well, the trouble is if they do that, they have to go get engineering plans.
Oh, yeah, that's
Correct,
gonna be
because-
Expensive.
Yeah.
Because once they start adding the pavement, then they're required to meet stormwater management standards per our
Right.
site plan bylaw.
Right.
So then they have to get into the engineering of a stormwater system,
So we
catchment,
just
all that
defer
kind of good
that to when
stuff.
they go to do their improvements, and then we get that opportunity to go through it with a fine tooth comb.
Okay, I'm with that, but let's get the
Yeah, and
clarification on the.
I think what we'll do is we've received this request, and it was put on the agenda as a pre-submittal meeting because that's what we had discussed.
And I think that's great, by the way.
So we'll kick this to the next meeting, which is January 8th, for the request to waive. And between now and then, we'll get clarification from the zoning board on their approval.
Their intent was, yeah.
Correct.
Sound reasonable?
Very.
Sound good with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? We don't have to close nothing, right?
No.
Do you have any
Move on.
questions for us, Carlos?
Any
or Aaron?
questions?
No, we appreciate your due diligence. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
As a comment, I'd add that I think that, once you're an existing business, I think the history of this board is that it's very, I don't want to say preferential, but it's very favorable towards existing businesses. So I think that the way that Mr. Chinnis has outlined will probably work to your advantage.
Outstanding. Thank you, one and all.
All right, good luck.
Thank you. All right, next order of business. Stone Farm Estates, Riley Road, closeout and bond release.
Correct.
So, This is a request to release the bond for Stone Farms having been completed.
It is.
We did have a review done by Graves Engineering, and they provided quite a few comments.
Oh, see, I thought this was a light comment letter.
Well, they did provide some comments that
They did.
we may want to talk about.
Yep.
So I want to preface this discussion with a little bit of history. This project began almost 10 years ago and is a self-contained private development that the planning board at the time took a cash surety. Is it a cash surety or is it a tri-party?
I believe it was a cash.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's a cash surety, similar to what one would do with a subdivision. Now, the town does not, will never own Riley Road or any of the other roads in there or any of the drainage structures, so this is sort of unusual for a town to do this on private property, on a non-road. I mean, this is a private road.
So none of this is going to be turned over to the town ever? It's always going to be
Correct.
private.
It's always going to be owned and managed by the association, and I believe the last unit has been sold.
It has.
Liscotti Development has,
New trustees were elected. For the record, John Scribner, Stone Farm LLC.
Liscotti Development has buttoned up the site, turned over the ownership to the trustees, and now is looking to close out their bond portion with the town. And some of this has been driven by the prospective trustees over the past 6 months or so, protecting their own interests in, okay, this is what the plan says, this is what, we're seeing, and wanting to make sure that as they turn it over, it's meeting the approved plan. And the other note I'll say is it's a development that's 10 years old. It's held up incredibly well over 10 years, and one can't expect to go out and have something look as if it's new after 10 years. So with that, I'll turn it over to John or the board.
Yeah, I'll open it up to questions from the board. I know Adam was working on getting some clarification of what's left of the amount of the cash bond.
It's
And
pretty
the
high.
potential option for reducing it by
Correct.
the amount.
Yeah,
It's
required.
300 and something thousand
it's
dollars?
actually closer to 700.
Oh, really? Did I read that wrong?
No,
No, total 700, you're saying?
well, the construction estimate was for 1.1.
Yeah.
And 1.5 is actually what was in the account,
But we've had several releases.
up about 800,000.
Okay.
So
There's still work to be done.
there is. and
according
it's
to Jeff,
Fairly minor work.
So are we talking about prorating this, basically? Is that the
Well,
idea?
I've sort of given that, there's a couple of options, and I laid this out for John, and I'll lay it out for you, in that he can ask for a reduction to, to cut up to everything that would cover what's in here, and that's probably about $60,000.
Okay.
And that's, back of the napkin numbers, but that builds in a little bit of variance if something happens, if the town had to take it over, which I don't imagine happening. You could approve the release pending a letter from Graves saying that all the issues had been satisfied, or John can do the work and come back and ask for a full release.
Yeah, have you had the opportunity to look at the letter that we received from our engineer?
I have, yeah.
Would you like to respond to it?
Well, yeah, the meat of the document is items 4 through 10. There was some discussion between Whitman Bingham and Adam regarding item 5 because invert channels are
Correct.
typically found in drain manholes. It was on the detail on the approved plans prior to us owning the project, and I think there was some decision made.
Yeah, the invert channels on the plans show clay brick, which is a sewer invert channel. So the Stone Farm wanted to put in concrete channels, which is appropriate for drainage, and Jeff said he thinks that would be most appropriate. I believe you folks either installed them or were planning to install them.
I haven't installed yet because I know we were going back and forth on how we wanted to approach the.
You're saying that his letter reflects the difference between what's called out in the plans and what was actually done?
Correct.
Would you, if you wouldn't mind, I don't want to take up too much of the board's time either, but would you mind just going, starting at 1 and then going to basically 10? And then kind of just going through and offering your responses to the concerns?
Item 1,
Yes.
walls were constructed prior to Stone Farm LLC owning the project.
Okay.
So if item 2 mentions stormwater basins, a different configuration. I believe this was addressed at Concom. We've
Yep.
already received our certificate of compliance. Item 3, the approved plans note reflectorized markers on steel posts on the emergency access road. This is an item that the board could take up for discussion. Graves notes that it impedes snow removal, so that's up to the board whether or not they want to enforce that.
Yeah, he's noted that no such markers have been installed. Have markers been installed?
No.
And do we know if that was a request by the fire department or for emergency vehicles? Do we know why?
There's no indication why. That was the previous fire chief. I imagine why is because the road winds through the woods essentially out to Sunny Hill Road.
Correct.
And it pitches from one side to the other. So I imagine there was some thought that if it needed to be used, they would want reflectorized markers. If you go out there, it's a pretty clear path. There's probably some brush that could be cut back, but nothing substantial. Like if you took one of those highway cutters and went and just kind of ran down the side and trimmed it back, it's a pretty open area for the most part. And I have never heard the fire chief complain about it, and we've had, over the years, several conversations about Stone Farm.
Would it be a hardship for you to install some markers on that road?
Or to get an updated
A request from
request from the fire?
the fire chief?
Yeah, we could reach out
Okay.
or,
Yeah, either
And get their
get a statement from the
opinion.
fire department, say that they're no longer needed, or see if we can rectify getting something installed.
Item 4 discusses particular sidewalk from the mailboxes to the boulevard entrance. That sidewalk was installed, again, prior to us owning Stone Farm Estates, and my understanding is that was done in one step. It's not a binder course and a top course for the sidewalks. We don't do our sidewalks or driveways that way either, so it could be a maintenance item that the trust could take up to put another top coat of pavement on that, but I don't believe that's an item that needs to be addressed now.
Okay.
Number 5?
Number 5, again, Adam and Anthony over at Whitman and Bingham discussed this and I guess agreed that a concrete invert channel will be sufficient rather than the brick invert channel.
So that would be a mitigation you would do, correct?
One more time?
Would that be a mitigation you would do, or is he saying that as it is, it would be fine?
No, it would be.
No,
this
if you
work
look
to
at
be
the
done.
photographs, the one looking down the manhole, you see that worn away spot at the bottom?
Yep.
So what an invert channel is it's a concrete gutter that goes at the bottom. And in sewer manholes, they build them out of brick, because the effluent eats away at the concrete, but not the brick. And in drainage, the concrete is a more sustainable
Gotcha.
material because it doesn't eat away the mortar and beat on the brick.
It still needs to be installed because
Correct.
it's missing.
Correct.
Okay, so that is a mitigation.
Correct. Item 6 just notes that the rim sits a little higher than the pavement, so he's suggesting adding some asphalt around that.
Okay. And so that's going to be mitigated?
Correct. 7 is similar, except that apparently the plow actually damaged the frame a bit, so it's a little bit more involved for that one, but same idea.
Okay, so that's a will mitigate as well. 8,
Item 8 is noting that along the emergency access drive, you'll see there's a picture a couple sheets back that just shows some gouging. It's never been an issue before, but I guess I could request comments from the fire department about that one as well.
Great.
Item 9, easy enough, those can be cut off. It mentions the back of the bolts, they're just longer than desired.
So that's to be done?
And then item 10, I'm in agreement that some remaining signs need to be installed.
so the will mitigate as well.
And then there's just 4 general comments. Catch basins have been equipped with hoods. I did that per the request of Conservation Commission. And then item 12 just mentions ongoing maintenance. 13 mentions the certificate of compliance, which we've already received. And item 14 suggests reaching out to the other departments for any other comments.
Okay. So it looks like we have some mitigation that is underway and has to take place. Some things you're already compliant with. So would you be looking for a reduction of the refund, or will you be looking
That would be
to
the
finish the
preference, given the
mitigation?
time of year.
Yeah,
A lot of this is infrastructure related, and it doesn't make sense to do it in mid-December.
okay. So what is the outstanding balance? Do we actually have that number?
I don't have the exact number. It's in the ballpark of 700,000. So if the board were to retain 60,000,
You
that
think
would
that
cover.
would be adequate to
Yes.
cover the things?
That would be adequate to cover what is remaining.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I
guys?
think we should
Well,
cover-
sorry.
I think we should retain a lot more than 60,000, because I think that would be a good incentive to, quickly remedy some of these concerns.
60,000 sounds,
Don't forget, the idea here is that if the project was abandoned and we had to deal with finishing it to transfer ownership,
Yeah.
it's what it would cost us to mitigate. It seems like it's already transferring ownership without any of the mitigation being done. So, I mean, we should make sure that whatever funds we hold back, we definitely could mitigate the problems with, but on the flip side of that, I'm not sure we have to gouge
Yeah.
as an incentive or anything.
I,
Because it is private, don't forget, this isn't town property.
Correct.
It's private property. And we're not taking ownership of the roads, we're not taking ownership of the sidewalks, we're not taking water, we don't have to deal with the stormwater, we don't clean the basins out or anything, right?
no, it's just to complete the work.
Yeah. It's all-
So I would also like to see at least a solid, estimate of costs, and I would like to get Jeff's input on the top course of asphalt, just to,
Well,
he said it.
I was
in
on
there.
site with Jeff when he did the initial walkthrough. I left
Okay.
before he started popping covers. And his discussion, if you look at the picture, you can see the Cape Cod berm does not meet the top of the sidewalk.
Right.
And generally with Cape Cod berm, it mounts up right onto the sidewalk in one flush level material. So and in looking at this, you can see how speckly it is. There's 2 courses of asphalt. There's binder course and there's top course. Binder course is a rougher aggregate. It tends to stand up to weather longer and better. Top course is really fine and has that really smooth black look. This is very clearly a binder type course or a heavier course of asphalt. And it's about 1 inch from the top of berm to where the flat portion of the sidewalk is. He felt that it was a clear indication that it was missing a course. If you look, you can see the lip at the mailbox end. And again, it's a small lip, it's blended to the best that it can be. And the same thing exists at the other end of the portion that he mentioned, the 380 some odd feet. He was, it didn't give a clear indication that one or the other was or wasn't done, but physically on site, it certainly does have the indication that it is missing a course of asphalt.
Right. So regardless of who owned it when it was done, or, the plans are to be built as the
Correct.
plan, so
Correct.
it still needs to be done. That's my point. Unless, again, I mean,
So we have a.
Jeff has said
we have a
that it needs to be
concern on
done.
4.
yeah,
My point on 4 was only that sidewalk was existing prior, and I know when we install our sidewalks, it's done in one step, binder and top included. So it's hard for me to say whether that went down as a
Okay.
binder and top in one step, or what just went down as binder.
But it will be done.
You acknowledge it has to be mitigated.
I acknowledge it doesn't look like the sidewalks that we have put in as of late. I just didn't know, if based on the age of it, it unraveled a bit, and it needs some attention,
Okay, let me-
whether it's
let me
addressed through
rephrase it.
this
So
or
are you
through the
willing to
trust.
mitigate that?
I'm not in
before you-
disagreement that if it's called out, that
that,
I'm not going to be, I won't argue with
Okay.
the engineer.
Yeah.
That it looks that it needs some work done, whether it wasn't done initially or
Okay.
just needs some.
So I read that, then, yes, this is something that you're willing to mitigate?
Yes.
okay. So,
Go about, there seems to be some concern about the dollar figure that you've come up with, so how do we go about getting an estimate that the rest of the board would be content with?
Well, we can get hard numbers from Jeff. He did give a verbal soft number of 60,000 he felt would cover the work plus any potential contingencies. And I will echo what you said, there isn't a precedent for holding more than is required to do the work. If this were a subdivision, and it's not, but, where this is not normal practice for a private development, if it were a subdivision, the law doesn't allow you to not release funds for work that's completed when requested, and completed and acknowledged that is done correctly.
Well, if I may ask the applicant a question, would you have an issue, I know that what seems to be the dollar figure that we're throwing around is around $60,000, and I think that sounds about reasonable. Would you have an issue if we said that we would withhold 80,000 until the rest of this was done?
Well, my question when I heard the 60,000 is, was that in an estimate from the engineer? Typically, they would provide one that the board can rely on.
so can we,
I think 80 is
We can
is
certainly
high.
get
I'm saying
I think
without-
60,000 is high. So yes, I guess I would have a problem with 80,000.
Okay. So you'd rather us get a more concrete number for an estimate for this before we make a decision on this?
Yes.
I think that's the way to go. I wouldn't want to penalize them in any hurtful manner.
So,
What number do you think is reasonable?
so we would be pending approval of this based on a holdback of an accurate estimate from
Correct.
Graves
So
Engineering?
what we'll do is we'll request the estimate from Graves. We'll follow up with the fire department and get any information
on the-
that you've requested from them. We'll put this on for January 8th, and then at that point, you can reduce the bond by what you feel is appropriate.
Well, I just had a question. What number do you think is,
Between 50 and 60.
between 50 and 60,000? So we said 60,000 without going through all the hassle, then, that would be okay with you?
Again, I prefer an estimate from an engineer rather than guessing.
Okay.
So, sounds like we have a course of action.
All right, great.
Sounds good.
So we don't have to do anything on this one, because there's no motion to do anything. Because,
We'll put it on for the 8th.
Put it on for the
We'll
8th.
move it
So
forward, and
table
then
till the 8th.
we'll take it under advisement at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Moving right along. Minutes approval. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review the minutes.
Yep, no issues.
I'm going to be honest, I have not had a chance to review the minutes. This has been a crazy week, but I trust that Marjorie has done an excellent job as always, and will defer to the majority of the board's opinion.
We have to vote on these, right?
Nope.
You mean us
We don't? We only take, I just have to sign it.
You say, is there any comments
Is there
or
any
corrections?
comments or corrections? So
No.
do you
No.
want
Just-
any of them?
None.
None.
Okay.
There is one set of minutes here that none of you have read.
Yes,
no, I
it's
can't-
the,
yeah, the-
executive, right?
Correct.
Because we haven't received them.
Correct.
Well,
And
we
because
received the surrounding
we
minutes,
can't
but-
send them out.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. We don't
And
sign this.
just put your initial at the top.
And you need them back, right?
Well, correct.
Oh, shoot,
So
right.
you can
Take a minute.
sit here on live TV and read 5 pages of minutes, or you can swing by the office sometime before the next meeting and vote at that meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do that.
Okay.
Marjorie will have them under lock and key when you come in.
Okay, next,
Oh,
order,
you're holding them right now. They're not in our packets.
No, they're not in your
Okay.
packets.
Like,
next
looking,
order,
going,
next order of business is, board reorganization. I believe this is because at the last meeting, Gregory has withdrawn his participation in several committees.
I
So,
move that we table that.
okay,
Till we have a more complete board.
Okay, I will say that,
yeah, I was gonna say, the only information I got is, Matt did throw his hat in the ring for capital planning.
correct, and Greg did put a pitch in for at least seating someone on capital planning because he's concerned about timing and getting that process moving along.
Right, 'tis the season, right?
Correct.
So,
Okay.
so,
Well,
can we approve the capital planning and then table the other two?
I'll take school committee. I would love to be.
Okay, so it sounds like we're not gonna table this.
No.
Did someone have a motion to
That's-
table it? You have to withdraw the
That-
motion.
Yes, do you want me to withdraw the motion? I will withdraw the motion.
Okay.
You realize that that's school building committee, and that's wrapping up, but
Oh,
not school
oh,
committee.
oh.
Okay,
Never
just wanted to clarify.
You have to run for school committee.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to work in the school initiative, so it certainly would work
Okay,
if I was.
so
you know,
let's start at capital planning. I'll look for a motion for capital.
I would nominate Matthew Allison for capital planning.
Second.
Okay, any other nominations for capital planning? Okay, all approved for Matthew?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that takes care of that one. I'll accept the nomination for school building committee.
Do you want to do that, Kim?
Sure.
I move that, Mr. Chinnis, what's the wording for this?
I nominate.
I nominate Mr. Chinnis, for school building committee.
Second.
Any other nominations? Any discussions? All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Green Community Task Force.
Now, this sounds like it's right up your alley.
Isn't this something Mr. Allison also, would be interested in?
Maybe.
Well, this is a liaison position, so it's really just going and
Saying-
reporting
Sitting.
back on what the Green Community Task Force is doing.
How often do they meet?
It's relatively
They've met once this year.
Yeah.
Great.
Very
I
infrequent.
know
Gladly do
that, I know that Mr. Bittner was a member of the committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and I know he put a pitch in for whoever the liaison is, sort of rallying for that same dual role, but what you're voting on now would just be the liaison position.
Okay.
So
I nominate Mr. Jeffries for Green Community Task Force Liaison.
I'll second that. Any other nominations? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, got through all that. Okay, committee reports. Capital Planning Committee. Okay, we won't have a report. School Building Committee, we don't have a report. Green Community Task Force, no report. Stormwater Task Force, no report. Agricultural Commission, no report. MJTC is me. Next meeting, the December meeting was canceled, so the next meeting will be in January. MRPC,
Next meeting, I believe, is Thursday. I don't think I'm going to be able to attend that one, so
Be able to be there. Let me check. Yep.
you can?
It's, MRPC.
Yeah. Yeah. Thursday, right?
It was last time.
It was last Thursday? Oh, I missed it. I'm sorry. Couldn't get that one either.
Able to attend then?
So, January.
Yeah.
January, the next one.
Nothing's really new.
However, I can say that, yeah, I did read the report of the agenda for the next meeting, which I've missed. And then I've also seen some recent, I've had some recent communications with the town manager, and it seems like they're very well informed by the MRPC on what's going on, and she's got a good handle on stuff. So anything I would bring in at this point would be, you know, just for the board to.
I think they direct email
Yeah,
her.
she
They
gets
do.
all, she's well, she's ahead of the curve, so.
All right, open space ad hoc
No, nothing scheduled.
and charter review.
We have a meeting this Wednesday. We're in the process now of going through, we've already finished the first 3 articles of kind of highlighting what we're interested in, and then now we're starting Article 4, which is looking into the town manager's responsibilities. I know that one of the things that we are trying to do is consolidate across the board the language for town employees that have, town boards that have employees that work with them, to make sure that the language mirrors the language that's in there for selectmen, of how the employers is expected to work alongside the boards. That we seem to have consensus that the language currently between the Board of Selectmen and town manager is great language, and so we're looking to replicate that across the board. That's really the only highlight, I think, for now.
I have a question. When are, and I don't know if this is something for the board to take up at a future date, but when are you going to be talking about length of service? Because, and this is just my opinion.
We have.
Oh, you have already? Okay. Are you
there's-
keeping us at 5 years?
Yes,
Yes.
there's-
Okay.
I think that
Much to Dave's chagrin.
Yeah. I think that it puts a tremendous, burden. 5 years is a long term. I think, 3 years would be more appropriate, but.
I think
it's
the
just my
idea that everyone seems to be in agreement on is that with planning, that you want to have people who are in it for a longer period of time than any other board in town, since planning is something that takes a lot of years to develop.
Sure.
And so I think the general consensus, which, I do agree with, but there is general consensus that, we are a board that should be targeted for 5 years. And that's,
Okay.
that way we can see things through.
I think there's also, it's a 5-member board, and turning over more than one member at a time can cause a dramatic shift in the way policy works. And I think, in general, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yep.
consistency purposes. But I think I did mention that you did note that you were interested in shorter terms. I'm
Yes.
pretty sure I did mention that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're going to lobby for longer term.
Oh, no. Hey, no way.
I don't want to have to run again. Such a hassle. Okay, director's items. The DLTA package was sent out?
Yep.
So this is a
Mr.
program.
Director?
This is a program that MRPC runs. This is what the economic development workshops and forums that have been happening with residents and businesses is being funded through. They do, I think it's usually 2 rounds a year. So they're soliciting new projects. So if the board feels there's anything that they would like to use that fits into this, we can put together an application and bring MRPC in.
So, yeah, this is relatively robust.
Correct.
And having just started to look at it tonight, I really didn't think much about what we would try to do with this. So, do you have ideas of what we would be looking to do? Or should we take it as a task to maybe have a mini task force look at what we should do with it, or?
I think with what the board's currently doing with the bylaws and stuff, I don't know that pulling something like this in additionally is going to move you in the direction that we could do something where we were planning for growth, priority development areas. That project was done in, I want to say 2012 or 2013. I don't know that they've necessarily shifted. I believe the town manager is going to go back for a second round for the economic development stuff to continue that. So I think that's a good use of it. A lot of this stuff.
It looks like they're tying this now to community compact, or at least trying to.
They are a little bit.
And MRPC was very open about it being easy funding. I mean, it's not a difficult process.
Community compact or DLTA?
Yeah, community compact. Are they tying this because they go on our community compact cabinet best practices?
Well, the town
It's
has
right in
already
here.
joined the community compact.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, so you have money that you can apply for each one of your best practices.
Correct, and we've done that, and we have that money, and those projects are already in progress.
Oh, right. Okay. So
So
you
what's,
can reapply.
so what's our part?
Correct, but you have to have expended the existing funds before you.
Oh, and they haven't
reapply.
gotten there yet?
Correct.
Okay.
All those projects are in process.
Okay.
The digital security effort is happening right now.
Yeah.
And the website is under redesign, which is part of the outreach.
Okay. I did ask John Hume.
Yep.
I can't remember his answer now, and I don't have my sheet with me, about, can we choose a different, can we choose another one?
To community compact?
Yeah.
No, you get 3.
And that's it?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those programs that's going to evolve as time goes on. It's only, I don't even think it's 2 years old yet.
Yeah.
And, every governor going back 20 years has instituted something like that, that sort of evolves and morphs over time. So I have a feeling that once they've signed up everybody that they can sign up, and those people have exhausted what they've signed up for, they'll evolve it into the next, where you either add one more or you re-up and it becomes some sort of matching program, or, I don't know what they'll do with it. That really,
Okay.
the tea leaves haven't told me.
Okay, but, I mean, if we wanted to submit a project, the final submission is due January 2nd, right?
It's January 5th, I believe.
No, this is the proposal's due January 2nd, for round 1.
Oh, for January 4th. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, proposal due dates.
So we certainly would not have time to do anything there.
No, but
But you're
my
saying
experience with these programs is, round 1, they never fill up their projects. We could meet again before January 2nd if the board felt there was something critical that they wanted to move forward, or we could.
Well, how about we just table it, give everybody on the board an opportunity to
Yep.
read through this, think of, if they can think of any particular projects that we think we would like to submit above and beyond what we're already doing, that we think would be not too heavy of lifting to get in by the end of January. And then we can just maybe talk about it at the next meeting.
I was gonna say, I think I'd rather put together a well-thought-out proposal than rush something in for the 2nd.
Right. No, for the
And,
30th.
yeah.
The first round.
Yeah, skip the first round.
Yeah, and I usually what happens is, after the 2nd round, they call out like a drastic call for proposals. Please, we
right.
have money, we have to spend
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
come and help us. So if we can have a well-thought-out proposal for round 2, it'll go further.
All right.
Okay.
Does that sound logical?
It does.
Yes.
Okay. Next director's item is charter review. Oh, we already covered that. Sorry. Oh, did you have something else you wanted to add to charter review?
No, I'm doing my review for, Michael has asked me to give him some comments, so I'm in the process of doing that. I don't know if the board has done any review of their own and wants to submit collective comments. You guys are trying to get comments by the end of this.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I spoke with you separately, and I also reach out to all the other building inspector, the building commissioner, I think, other people in the building, and Ritter, just about everyone that's in there, to submit comments to me by the end of the month, since I'm the liaison for the building departments. So if the board would like to submit any comments, of course, we should do that by the end of the month.
Ooh.
But I don't think that anyone has really noted anything, with the exception of the stuff about employees.
I was well read on the charter a few years ago, but I haven't. It's been 3-4 years
It
since I
doesn't
read
say
it.
too much.
Yeah.
about.
So I wouldn't even know where to start with comments or suggestions.
All right, I just wanted to give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
We all individually have that opportunity.
Correct, you always have that opportunity individually.
All right, definitions and use table. I
Let's do it.
would certainly accept a motion to table that one, too.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
My discussion would be that if we want to bring this to Maytown meeting and we want to move this forward, we've got to start wrapping it up. There was, this is all the comments to date with notes on what we need to go back and talk about, because the board either felt that there were members missing that should have comment, or there was some disagreement that they wanted to
Yeah.
re-review and come back on.
That's what I would like to do, because I'm just getting this now, so I would like to review it and
Okay.
then come back,
I
because
think we should do a
I was gonna say, I
workshop.
did send this out
I would
last
not
week.
be opposed to it.
think
You
we should-
did?
Yes.
Yeah, this did go out.
I did not.
Last
I
Monday.
don't believe I got this.
December 11th, it went out in the email.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's dated the 11th, because
Oh, right
that's
around the
today.
11th.
But
Oh,
it went out, it went out last Monday or Tuesday.
Fourth?
I'm sorry, well, I don't recall receiving it in my email. I did see a note that hard copies were available, but I did
Yeah.
not get a chance to get one, so.
I think we should schedule a workshop for January. And I think we should schedule additional workshops until we can kind of get through it. I think it's really difficult most of these meetings last for a pretty long period of time. I think it would be beneficial if we just had a workshop where we strictly focused on definitions and use.
It's only
I would not be
7:30.
opposed to that.
Say again?
I said it's only 7:30.
Well, today's
Well,
an exception. But we're out of here within the next 30
No, I understand that.
I don't know, I mean, I know Ken's, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that you're often right on time, so I don't know what your schedule is like before the meetings, but I'm not opposed to, if we can take an hour before the next meeting, you know what I
So
mean?
start at 5:30.
Start at 5:30, run through it no, can't do it? Can you find another day?
I cannot do that.
Okay.
No, my meetings for my real job go right up till 6 o'clock every night, so getting here for 6:30 is a challenge for me sometimes.
Okay.
be able to, would we be able to add, I know this month's probably not ideal because we have this workshop tomorrow and holidays, but next month, is your schedule looking like we could squeeze in another workshop? Maybe on a
early
Monday when
January?
we don't have a meeting?
Yeah, we could probably squeeze something in on a Monday that we don't have a normal planning board meeting. That would-
Okay.
All right. Well, in January, I mean,
What do we have on the schedule coming up?
Yeah, because we have meetings on the 8th and the 22nd in
And we
January.
currently have nothing scheduled on the 8th and the 22nd as well, so there's great opportunity to get a lot done in those meetings, if the load stays light.
Well, we did just add two things, but they're brief.
Yeah, I would say both
We
of
also
those
look
are.
at the 29th of January as well, because we have two holidays on Mondays, the 1st and the 15th.
Yep.
So could we look at the 29th of adding that in as a workshop day?
January?
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. So then if we get through January 22nd, we think we're still in bad shape, we'll add the meeting on the following,
Monday.
was it the 29th?
Yeah. Okay. So we will, hopefully we'll get to it before then,
Well,
and we
yeah,
won't
we're
need
not
it? Is
gonna-
that your
we're not
point,
gonna make
Ken?
it- We're not going to make it to spring warrant then.
Really?
When is that
The
needed?
warrant generally opens in March, the first couple of weeks of March, and we need to have
Well-
a finished article for the most part to hand them to put in the warrant.
Yeah, what I'm asking is, we can still work on it on the 8th and the 22nd?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
the 29th, only if we need it.
Correct.
So, okay.
So what is your deadline? When do you think we need to be done this
I would say
draft?
we need to be substantially done in early February. And so substantially done, so we still have solar, marijuana, and, they didn't make it in this draft, but the PRA and the cluster development, I think, should be in this section as well, under special uses. Those I don't think need to be altered drastically. I just think that they're better served as part of the use regulations rather than stuffed back into dimensional regulations.
PRA and cluster?
Yeah, I think that they fit more appropriately up at this end. I think that there's probably some minor tweaks that could be made to both of them to make them a little bit more in line with what the board desires. But I don't think there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done there. I know Michael has some concerns about marijuana that he's already brought up that, the board had some concerns about his concerns, and so there's, I think, some negotiation that needs to be done to find the middle ground where that happens. And then I think solar, I think there's some fundamental structural issues with the way that it's meted out. And I think that there's a way to make it more functional than it is, and do some work to reduce the burden on this board, given the current climate of solar. And I think some of the discussion previously has been it not being a primary use in a residential area, limiting its footprint in relation to the size of parcel, specifically in residential area. So I think some of those things being outlined in the bylaw make it more functional and give this board an easier negotiating position than simply it needs to have X number of buffer feet and, then everything else is kind of
Yeah, it would be more guidance.
less defined. And I also think that some of the approval criteria could be expanded to include other things that the board had concerns about during the hearing but aren't currently in the bylaw.
I would just like to make a comment, if I may, to Mr. Chair, that I would rather it be right than
Correct,
be on the next.
I'm in agreement with that.
I would like to see the issues that recently were sort of came into view with the bylaw, especially with regard to special permit. Cleared up if we can.
That's a relatively simple fix. I'm actually in the process. I want to contact both the ZBA and the building commissioner with the proposal, as well as the planning board, because they're the three groups that would be affected by that. So before the new year, you'll see something on that.
So, but priority-wise, I would, obviously, we need to get the definition and use table done. I think the solar should wait until we have the time to do it right. And the bylaw issues that we recently uncovered, I think, are important.
Okay, so then, I guess what my proposal to the board would be is if we're going to look at it that way, then maybe we stop making changes for, going further into the bylaw, except, the marijuana, I think, is probably a fairly benign change. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting with that.
Okay.
It sounds like it's
not
adding some distances and adding some general wording. We're not restructuring the entire thing, correct? At least not per your proposal.
We're going to talk about it later, but correct.
Yeah.
And then what I would say is up into page 50. Just try and nail down the language in there.
In this.
Correct. And most of it we've gone through. The only thing that we haven't really touched is Summer Street.
Okay.
Within there. And trying to finalize any edits in there, because this marries to the use table, at least up into page 12. And the rest of it is, some of it is just striking things and just correcting language that would tighten things up.
Okay.
So I think that is achievable by February.
Yeah.
And then we can shop it to, and I'll add the PRA and the cluster, just move them up into here so that we're organizing things, similar things in similar places.
Okay.
And then we can attack the solar after that.
Yeah, and if it makes the timeline, then great.
Sure,
And if-
yeah. And I think that we'll also have recreational marijuana coming down the pipeline for fall.
Correct.
So we have covered this and provided comments all the way up to,
Up to Summer Street overlay.
okay.
Up to
You know,
about page 45.
I would not be opposed if, I don't know how this sounds to you guys, but using that January 29th workshop, if we don't need it for this, we can keep it on there and we can sort of give ourselves an hour's worth of time to just sort of get more organized on these issues.
What do you guys feel about a December 18th workshop, which is next Monday?
No.
Oh, that doesn't work?
No.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, but.
I can't do it, but
Let me set a meeting for you guys.
Classic, man. But let me set one for you guys.
just one.
I'll send donuts.
I'm traveling.
We can
next
plan for the,
But I'm just trying to figure out how to try.
No, I appreciate it.
We
Thank you.
all have to commit to getting through this in detail.
Yeah.
Before the next meeting.
Yes.
So January 8th.
Yeah, let's do that.
You know, I'd like to roll through.
Yeah.
This, if we can, on January 8th.
Okay.
And be in relatively good shape as far as the,
That will free up a couple more weeks for, we can
Yeah,
sneak some
and,
other stuff in.
really, there's been so much work put into this.
Yeah.
And,
the thing is
and
that
we're,
there's still comments in here that are not inconclusive.
correct, because the
Because we
board,
haven't given a direction.
correct.
Requested,
The
right,
board was
more time.
inconclusive about their direction on some of those things.
except for, I want to, I think every time we talk about this, I always talk about chickens.
Yep. Well, and that's why the small question mark is in there.
And the original language has small flock.
Yeah.
And I think that there was general consensus that we wanted to keep small flock in there. And so I'd like for the word small to remain in there for small flock. I don't think that, I think if we, and I know this is like a little weird, but what really worries me is that the first person who decides to have 50 roosters because they're upset with their neighbors, and now we're going to be sitting here talking about how many chickens you should have and the ratio of chickens, and I think we can avoid all that with the group language of just
Well,
keep a small
I think that's a
flock.
discussion to have when we go through all the issues in this. I don't have a problem adding small back in. I had it taken out in mine, and I don't know if that was in error or,
Well, I think it was an error. I think you took out small, and I think we talked about this twice, and I think we all agree that small was okay.
that's fine. Like I said, I don't have a problem adding it back in.
Okay, so we'll make our changes and we'll
Yes,
come in.
correct. And if you want
Voting for
to,
bear, as it were, on the 8th.
And the comments in here that say woo, those are you?
yes,
Okay. W-U.
Oh.
Be a word user, I would guess.
yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else on definitions and use?
No.
Okay. Read it, review it.
Live it, learn it, love it.
Notices, communications? Didn't see any.
I think
Yeah, there were some.
there was a couple.
Yeah, town
Oh,
notification.
they all went out. Everyone read them, reviewed them.
Yep, did.
Okay. Meeting schedule. All meetings are held here at 6:30 unless otherwise indicated. The next meeting is tomorrow. It's an Economic Development Workshop with the Board of Selectmen and the Sewer Commission at 6:30 PM. That is here as well, correct?
Yes, there will be a presentation at 6 PM.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I will not be able to make it tomorrow.
MRPC will be presenting their findings from the Economic
You either?
Development Forums.
You will not be here either? Okay. Are we gonna have a quorum? Do you know?
Yes, well, I think Matthew said he would be there.
Are you gonna be here?
I'm questionable. I'll be coming from Boston tomorrow, so I may.
So we may not have. a
I'll be in
quorum.
Cambridge tomorrow.
And I don't know that we have to have a meeting. The Board of Selectmen is having their regular meeting
Yeah,
to do economic development discussions.
okay.
We've posted it as a meeting. If a quorum of the board doesn't show up, we just,
Just participate in the workshop,
yeah,
right?
you just participate as an individual. We
Yep.
put together minutes that say there was no quorum, so no meeting.
Right. So next meeting is January 8th. We have a couple of things that we push to January 8th. That should be quick, and then we get this thing nailed down. The meeting after that is January 22nd, nothing scheduled. And then we'll potentially have a workshop on the 29th, depending upon how far we can progress with what we want to go to warrant with. So I'll open up for public comment. Any public comment from the public? No, I don't guess any. Any public comment from the board?
No.
Okay. Ongoing items, economic development.
See tomorrow night's meeting.
Very good. Board comments and concerns.
Student initiative. So I have reached out, more communication with the school department regarding the initiative. I've gotten in touch with different members of different committees to kind of highlight what they're doing. So here's the highlight. So basically, they have a couple of programs that I like for them to expand on. One is a student internship that they offer. I'm going to get the acronym that they use incorrectly. I want to say it's called the STEP program, and that is geared towards seniors, and it connects them with different members of the community or different organizations within the community and outside community for them to volunteer. I think the expectation is about 4 hours a week. So that's one opportunity. Now, I reached out to the Finance Committee and other committees that are boards without employees who probably need some help with taking minutes or things of that nature. So anything that we do, the idea would be for it to be in place for next year. But that's one goal, is to figure out what opportunities exist within town, kind of come up with a master list, and then work with the schools to see if they can help fill it. And the other thing is, I've been in contact with the town manager over this, as well as members of the school, employees of the school, and Loxley Joe, the superintendent, about putting together a presentation series. So once we have more information on that, the idea is to pair this with curriculum. I have a couple of different points of contact with both the middle school and the high school, and the idea would be to inform the student populations in middle school and high school of how town government works and pair it to their curriculum on civics and things of that nature, which, I didn't know this, but is just coming back into the curriculum this year. So that's what's going on with the student initiative. Certainly, it's going to, like I said, the goal is to get everything in place for next school year. So I think this is going to be a methodical thing. We're getting ready to hit the holidays, so I think I'll have more by January 8th.
Nice.
And registered marijuana dispensaries.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've brought this up before, and, just to reiterate the highlights here, right now, our bylaw for medical dispensaries was written at such a time prior to the state stating that they do no longer consider marijuana to be a agricultural activity. So our bylaw basically affords for marijuana to be considered an agricultural activity, which it was prior to December 30th of last year. And so therefore, it pairs with the, what's the name of that other one? The right to farm stuff. So it basically pairs with the whole right to farm in town and saying, well, if you're a farm, then this is allowed. So what I'm proposing is, I think that the compromise is that maybe in order to, protect the farmers, that we should keep language that allows the cultivation of marijuana to occur in residential areas, provided that it is a piece of land that is currently used for agricultural purposes. So what really changes, the real changes that I'm proposing are to restrict cultivation to buildings, so that would prevent open grows. And that is a minor language. Also, right now the language says allowed by right, and now this would say allowed by special permit in the residential zones. And then the other change is the setbacks, which I actually think that I should propose a much smaller setback than 2,500 feet. So I think a more appropriate setback would probably be 500 feet from abutting residential property lines. So I would amend what I've proposed to be 500 feet. And that way, with these facilities, I think that gives a decent buffer. So the idea here, again, is to permit this in residential areas on land that is currently agriculturally used, but to restrict it to buildings.
And on that setback, I would suggest that as it gets written, be to property zoned or currently used residentially. And that way, if someone is putting a building in an area adjacent to something that's not zoned residentially but is used residentially, those folks would enjoy the same protection.
Okay.
And that's a simple,
Yeah. Now, we need all 5 of us to agree to something in order for it to go to, how many of us?
3 of the 5.
3. To get it to go. 3, right?
Yep.
to get it.
A majority
to get it
of the
on-
board.
To warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To warrant, and then you need a supermajority of town meeting.
right.
And what are your thoughts on these changes?
That makes a lot more sense to me. You know, I
The
could,
setback still might be a little bit steep, but,
it might be, but that's a lot better than the 2,500
well, the
was.
2,500 was just, that was
Yeah,
completely impractical.
yeah. But
The 500 is still, is
cultivation.
pretty significant.
Yeah. I gotta give it more thought. Restricting cultivation to indoor, I've got no problem with that because it does tend to smell, and for security reasons, I would think that they would want it indoors, but, property zoned are currently used residentially. Yeah. Residentially. In residential zones, you're saying. These changes would not affect if you're gonna do it, as the bylaw currently states, in commercial zones.
Correct.
Okay.
That's already provided,
Right.
under the locations. It's allowed in commercial zones, by special permit. Really, it's just the language about the residential. It's taking, replacing number 2, which previously says that it's allowed in all districts by right if applicants eligible for, basically that's the right to farm bylaw, and any cultivation within a building will require a special permit. And again, the changes are saying cultivation must be within a building, but it's still allowed if they're eligible under the protections of right to farm.
Okay.
So your proposal it would read cultivation and/or agricultural processing allowed in all districts by special permit if applicant is eligible for protection under sections blah, 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 blah. Any cultivation shall be within a building.
No, it's as written. It's as written on this form. And if cultivation will remain a secondary use. I don't know if-
Accessory use.
Accessory use, thank you. So. Number 2 would say RMD facilities that cultivate and process but do not retail marijuana are allowed in all districts by special permit if applicant is eligible for protections under section yada yada, and if cultivation will remain an accessory use. Cultivation must be within a building.
Okay, so
You
you're
have that?
adding the accessory use to.
You have this?
I do, that's not what I was looking at.
Yep. And
So-
if cultivation will remain an accessory use.
Ken, can I ask you about the 500-foot? Why you feel it's, is it too restrictive, you feel?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned because I think of a farming property and greenhouse location in correlation to where the house is.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily think of those as being really that far away. And a lot of farm properties are relatively close to the street. And so you'd have a 500-foot setback from the street. So you could have a 450-foot walk through your backyard to get to your greenhouse, which can be pretty unpractical for farming use. I mean, think of it like your snowfall, you gotta get a
You'd have
path
to
out
get
to
something
it and
out
all
to
that
it,
sort of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I don't
So-
think this would affect the personal use stuff. I think this would only be
No,
with
it's-
RMDs. So this would be
Well,
really large.
it's for it's a farming purpose, right? So,
Well,
Well,
no, not
no.
according to law anymore. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They're saying that it's no longer considered farming. It's no longer an act of farming, of agriculture.
I think to Ken's point, he's saying that where you're including that it's eligible for special permit in any district where a property qualifies
As a farm.
agriculturally.
As a farm.
So a farmer would then theoretically be
able to grow it.
operating
Sure.
a secondary business
Yes.
of marijuana cultivation
Yep.
in addition to his dairy or normal vegetable growing.
Yeah.
and my
And
thought
so-
is he could have a greenhouse that is like 50 feet off of his house in his backyard.
Oh, well, I think
He
that,
wouldn't be allowed to do it because it's too close to the property line.
So if you were to take Stillman's down on Lancaster, the
Perfect
the vegetable
example.
Stillman's, not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cow Stillman's.
Right.
You drive by and you can see those greenhouses probably 350 feet off the road. And if they were to convert one of those, I think Ken's saying that having to go an extra 150 feet back into the property would be burdensome because it wouldn't allow them to congregate all their farming activities in one area.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a showstopper. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
certainly better than 2,500. Like you said.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna have a dirt road out through the woods someplace
Yeah.
and go hide your green.
No, it's good. See, I didn't even think about it that way, so I like to get
I
all
was
the
thinking
input.
of like farming, having this opportunity to use this as a secondary
Yep.
income.
Okay.
Yeah.
In small quantities, and there's all kinds of specialized,
Boutique marijuana.
yeah, there's.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
You could come up with our own Lunenburg strain, who knows?
So there's still a lot to consider. For me, there's still a lot of
But 500
consideration
is much better than 25.
that I need to put into that. so.
Okay.
So it's just that one paragraph you're looking to alter?
No, there's two. It's the first one, which is changing number, where are we at here? It's on the first page, so we're looking at A, B, C, D is changing to D2 and replacing D2.
Yep.
And then it's also looking at F2 and changing that where it says.
Oh, the setbacks.
Shall be surrounded by a buffer strip which shall be 200 feet in
Yep.
depth.
So
And then
that's
change that to 500
Okay, yeah.
from the residential.
Excuse me.
But everything else, I think Marjorie did a great job writing this. So which I learned that Marjorie was able to draft a big chunk of this during a certain transitional period with staffing and board members. So I think otherwise it's fine.
Okay. Any other comment on the marijuana dispensary?
Not at this time.
Any other board comments or concerns?
Great job tonight, Mr. Chinnis.
Yes. Terrific. Moved us right along.
I would accept a motion for adjournment if anyone is so inclined.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Don't forget to sign the plans before you leave.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we are adjourned. So what do I got to sign?